Okay, so it is 7:04 on February 5th, 2020, and I'm calling the Board of Health meeting to order. So we have 3 variance hearings for this evening, a scheduled appointment, various items of business is noted on the agenda, and no items to consider for adding?
None unless you have anything.
Okay, anybody have anything that's come up to add? Okay, how about that? All right, and we'll wait for the agent for some things. Let's get some of the easy things out of the way. How about permits? So we have one disposal works installer permit for renewal for Holliston Sewer Service. So renewal, so they've worked here before, in good standing?
Yes.
Application, payment,
Yep.
all that? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the permit renewal?
So moved.
Conditional to a pre-construction conference.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, any other comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, you sign this down.
Um, We have an application for an exemption from rabies vaccination for Sadie. I seem to recall Sadie's name.
Seen Sadie before.
Yes. Any comments by anyone? Other than, I'll just note that, right, there's some animals who, because of other health reasons, have trouble with certain vaccinations. We have granted this before for Sadie, but it doesn't mean we have to do it again.
I just want to confirm the date, so that 10/20 is cut off, is at 10/20/19? Just in the photocopy for when the veterinarian's exam was.
I got the same thing, so
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. There is a list of responsibilities that the owner takes on that are indicated and they've signed to in terms of maintaining them and rabies isolation, et cetera. All right, do we have a motion to allow for the exemption from the vaccination for Sadie?
So moved.
Second?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
You send
Aye.
that.
I'm
you
all
send
set,
that
aye.
also.
All right, so let's do the chair's meeting with the Dover Board of Health and the Board of Health chair. So I was contacted by Gerald Clark, who's chair of the Dover Board of Health, and there is a grants program that has recently come up. It's from the Department of Public Health. They are looking to promote shared services among municipalities. So examples of other kinds of things that have been funded, and this is based on memory, so don't hold me to this strictly, but there have been some visiting nurse collaborations among towns. Oops, and now, let's see. They have some listed here. That makes it so much easier. How about that? Does everyone, I have this I'll give this to you afterwards. This is something that I got at their meeting
Okay.
just the other night. The Framingham Health Department has shared public health nursing services with Ashland, Hudson, and Holliston in partnership with the MAPC. Peabody Department of Health and Human Services and 9 other municipalities for the North Shore Mother Home Visiting Program, also in partnership with the MAPC. The East Longmeadow and Longmeadow Health Departments are sharing public health services, which I'll say for that, that almost sounds like sharing staff, but apparently the grant money isn't available to fund us a position. So I'm not sure what constitutes sharing. I tried to find some information on what the guidelines are for the grant, and that hasn't been easy to locate, but Gerald Clark has been going to meetings on this and is trying to get more information about this. So I think if we are interested in coming up with something to do between the two towns, he may be doing the lion's share of the research and trying to identify what's possible. And also Newburyport Health Department with Amesbury, Salisbury, Newbury, and West Newbury for regional animal control services. So there are these monies available. Of course, the deadline, I believe, for submitting for the next round of grants is February 27th, if I have that correct.
Yeah, that's what that says.
So, things that we talked about, and that was in the list. Animal management issues. He mentioned some concerns with doggy daycare kinds of
I
things.
read
and
all that.
taking care of that. And I will note that when we went on the site walk for 41 North Main with Mass Housing, there is a dog daycare kind of set up at the back of 41 North Main at the moment. So,
Yeah, that went through ZBA. I think you commented.
yeah. So Gerald also mentioned he's been at some presentation recently where they were talking about the certain IA technologies. I believe he mentioned Elgin, that there are some issues with sort of early failure with some of the systems, so.
There is with, I don't know if it's, I don't think it's Elgin, it's infiltrators.
Yeah, I thought it was, right,
Infiltrators, definitely.
so.
So you've
okay.
gotten information on that?
Yeah,
Well,
I think
haven't received
Mark has
information, but
mentioned
it's,
it.
the engineers just aren't designing infiltrators.
Using it anymore?
Yeah. So he was thinking, is that something to look at? Do we need to be on top of that? Although I think, hopefully with the group that's on Cape Cod, the Barnstable, it's at Barnstable testing of septic systems and performance and things like that, the ones who are investigating the layer cake design. Do that, and we could borrow from them. He also wanted to look at reserve area provisions and other ways to do it besides having it between trenches, because he was concerned that the soils may already be compromised if you go to use the soils in between the trenches after an existing system has failed. So it was something, ways to provide guidance for developers. Triple E, he said that from meetings he's been to, he thinks they're going to be de-emphasizing spraying and emphasizing personal protection, and I couldn't tell if this is a state level or just maybe a preference he might have is for permethrin use, but that it's difficult to obtain the proper sorts of permethrin, and it might be something of sourcing it, and do the boards want to make it available to people to purchase? That seems difficult to me, because that's not a role we have, of being a conduit for materials, and that would be sort of our seal of approval on it, and I don't know that we have that kind of expertise to do that.
Yeah, we-
Insight repellent?
Yes.
Yeah.
The boards would get involved in
Yeah, I
stuff
don't
that
think
you
so.
could buy at
So-
CVS?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
that one, no.
permethrin is harder to get there, but it's easy to get on Amazon. You can get
Yeah,
clothing that's
apparently,
been,
he's mentioned that
treated.
there are problems with the things that people get on Amazon and that they're not
There's plenty
what
of
they
good- we
should
could-
be, so.
yeah, I mean, we could always put links like, here we know are some good providers on our website or
Oh,
something.
see, that I think is still a hurdle to even figure that out. How would we know?
Well, my
Sure.
company has a list because it's part of our health and safety requirements for going in the field in the spring, so I could easily see who we rely on if you
Uh-huh.
want. I mean, it's pretty easy to provide a link, like here's a, suggested source or something.
I guess we'd have to just put disclaimers. Anyway, so
Yeah.
that's something to consider. So other things for the shared services grant, so we talked about is, so Dover has the wells, monitoring wells they've installed around town, and
Mhm.
they're trying to understand how groundwater levels might be changing as a result of installation of more wells or other factors and tracing things, and they're doing some quality testing as well. And this is a tricky area, but we're talking about taking well data that we might have on hand, or well logs that have already been submitted to Mass DEP, and trying to get those actually mapped. So one thing that we've always had a disconnect on is we may know depth at which water was found in a well, but we don't know the elevation of the wellhead. So,
Are you talking
right,
about
'cause we don't
private
know-
wells? I
Yes,
just know
on
monitoring
everybody's
wells.
property. So whether by getting the data off the Mass DEP website, we could set up some sort of GIS system that could
Interns.
start to understand that, and yields in different places, and they have the same situation there. And we have a database partially here, but some mechanism to pull it off of EDP and get it in, and have somebody set that up and get it organized. And
So
would
is that
that
a-
give us information that we could do better decision-making with, or yes or no, or it's still so complicated, the dynamics of dry years, wet years, how that correlates with what the levels are, but that might be a,
So are you saying to make a
possibility.
layer GIS with a location of all the private wells? I mean, so,
and a three-dimensional, because the
Where it's
well
screened.
logs say where was groundwater encountered on such and such a date. And then that might have to be correlated with USGS wells and adjustment
right, but
factors.
so
And
that
so-
can be, that's a field in the
Yes.
database. So, because under the new regulations for wayside cleanup, it's now a requirement that you provide parameters, GPS parameters for identification, for like monitoring wells, for looking at contamination. That's a new requirement from, a couple of years ago that, or in the new proposed regs actually, that you have to provide that information so that there can be confidence and accuracy on the DEP websites, so that, you can pull up data and, all that. So do you know if what entity would do that for private wells though? Nobody?
Unclear,
Okay,
unclear.
okay.
In the past, the Board of Health has talked about, could we get some students for their community
Like
service
intern.
to go out with handheld GPS
Yeah.
and go out and market?
Yeah.
But that also means contacting property owners, making sure you get
Access,
access,
yeah.
finding it on the property.
I think it would be
Aiding it.
great though, because it also would improve the accuracy of all the plans and like the setbacks requirements for septic. Like, it would never be a question of, if we had a GIS database of where everybody's well is, when we're looking at variances and other things, we would have high confidence that the wells are actually located on the map. So
Okay,
I think that'd be a useful thing. I think when you start getting into depths and things, again, it's making a database that has that as a field.
And then the other thing that we've talked about, and they haven't been confronting it as much in Dover, and that's the larger systems, the up to 9,999 gallon septic systems, and understanding the dynamics of that. And we've talked about having a professional or professionals try to develop some guidance for us on how to evaluate, which feeds into the open space thing that we're supposed to be weighing in on, with the problem being that how much does Title V septic design, is it relying on dilution to some degree? Because we saw with the fields at Sherborn that there's a steady state plume that's, for nitrogen, was 3 times the drinking water limit. So, and that was steady state and wide and flowing out of this enormous system. And that may be flowing out of everybody's system, we don't know, but maybe it's a narrower path, or maybe it does become more dilute. So, but that might be another thing that would be nice to have, that kind of help provided. So, I don't know. Is it worth trying to see if we could get any outside funding to look at these things? And does anyone have any other ideas? Do you want to throw out any of these ideas?
How about bedrock disruption? We're gonna try and get a grant, that would be great if we could.
Do what?
To research, and maybe help us develop.
More specific. Yeah, okay.
What about, we know that anytime there's it's already on the DEP's radar because it's one of the things they mentioned, but private water supplies are not protected by law. There's no statutory protection, so there's no recourse if a person's water is contaminated. But at the state, their Title V has minimum drinking water standards, or in cooperation with Title V, there are requirements for drinking water standards on public water supplies, which are enforced by DEP. And when zoning regulations are bypassed for other desirable endpoints such as affordable housing, what about, shouldn't those be required to meet at least Title V standards for drinking water, or just state drinking water standards, not Title V, state drinking water standards?
So, right,
So-
you mean on an ongoing basis, because right now we have requirements when the well is put in the initial testing.
Correct, but there is no enforcement if it deviates after the fact.
Right.
And so, what about state level, a grant to find a state level interest? The state's what is imposing the desire to increase affordable housing, but the state is also interested in having safe, clean drinking water in those affordable units.
Mhm.
So, shouldn't the DEP have an interest in enforcing drinking water standards when?
That's a reg change, right? So
Yeah,
that would be
but
a
I'm
regular.
just saying, couldn't one of these
It's a,
grants be useful in potentially addressing the issue?
you mean,
But for a change at the DEP level? I don't think that's,
No, it would not.
as outsiders,
No, it would be
we
state
could do
level
that
because
for.
the state has drinking water standards which apply to public water supplies.
but
And it's enforced by the DEP.
isn't this for grants to local boards of health?
Yeah.
So I don't, even though I think that's a good idea, I don't, she's asking for grant topics for local boards of health to get
Sherborn
money.
and Dover have a higher amount of private water supplies than
Right.
most towns. Most towns have, 98% of the town is on public water supply. It only applies to 20 people.
I
Where in
think we
Sherborn,
could
it
look
applies to
at the
100%
grant
of
if we
the
want to do that.
population. So maybe a local grant would be appropriate, because it doesn't apply to the same extent in other communities.
So what would the grant be used for? What specific, how would the money to our local board come into play?
Well, I have a couple, there are some potential ways that it could be used, but I also need to learn more about exactly what the parameters are of the grant. I have
Yeah,
to
we
read
don't
about
know
the
what
grant,
it is.
so it might be I'm just suggesting that it might be an opportunity
Okay,
for
so
us
something
to
with,
have assistance at addressing an issue that's unique to us, or I should say, concentrated in our town more than others. And we might be able to get some help in this because it's already on the radar at the state level.
okay, so something about,
Protecting,
Would-
how about protecting private drinking water supplies
okay, although protecting it,
in affordable housing.
they don't have much of an affordable housing issue in Dover.
Well, we all have
Yeah.
a goal to have a percentage of affordable housing.
Yeah, they, so anyway, it was an interesting discussion on that, but
Yeah, I
it's
know.
informal, so I won't
That's okay.
share
We
on
can
those
talk about it
topics,
later.
but yeah.
Let's look into the grant.
So, all right,
And
so
find out what the
something
parameters
on
are. Find out
private
whether it's an appropriate time to
water
address that
supply
issue.
protection. That's somehow different than the initial testing or something. Okay,
Yes.
so, all
It
right.
would be
And 40B, okay.
anywhere we're zoning, we have zoning that helps us to maintain drinking water standards.
Right. And that goes,
When we bypass the zoning requirements for the goal of helping to achieve other programs' goals, we need to have a mechanism that allows us to continue to protect the drinking water in those situations. And is there a way at the state that we could, or is there something we could do?
okay,
And
that
could
ties
this
back
be-
into the
Yeah.
large SAS
Right.
systems and understanding better the impact when they're large.
Correct.
And more dense.
Yeah,
So that could almost be a subset to,
yeah.
this could be a subset to that. Okay, so, all right. Okay. Anything else anyone can think of? It's kind of a tough one without knowing. And,
Yeah.
and those other examples are just hard to understand too, how the grant money, if it's not supposed to be for staff, what did it mean to provide animal control services? That sounds like a staff
Yeah,
person.
it does.
So, but maybe it was infrastructure, maybe there are places that have lots of animals to collect and house somewhere, or, I don't know.
And then do they put them up
Waste
for like
management.
adoption in the local paper? And we have a nice bat.
Maybe it's waste management or something like that.
No. Oh, you mean for the animal
Animal
control?
waste management.
So,
I mean, I don't know.
yeah, I don't know either. So, we're trying to find out more, but I want to get this to you as soon as possible. And then, the one other thing is, they're still interested in getting together to discuss coordination, I guess, with coronavirus, and some school issues came up recently, although the schools seem to do fine. There was a potential China trip for some students. It's not an official school-sponsored event, but the group that was going to do that did cancel their trip.
Wise.
So, and we talked a little bit about, at what point can the school say if students have, or others, staff, have traveled to places that pose a communicable disease risk potentially to the school population, that, how do you get informed about who's traveled where? Can
Like
you
setting
prohibit
a
people from
protocol or-
coming? And again, informal communications where we really hope that the CDC and the state will
Yeah.
step in and provide that kind of guidance
Absolutely.
before, on a town-by-town basis, we have to try to make those kind of decisions. So, because they are complicated and they shouldn't be I don't think, just done at the town level.
It's not our job to set that sort of thing. It's our job to follow it.
Right, there's a lot of domino effect to that. If you're barring children from coming to school, and then they don't get
quarantine.
enough school days and all that kind of.
Potentially
it's
anywhere
just-
on the globe is a risk place at this point, so there's nowhere to draw a line.
But although the CDC said in America, it's actually a very low risk, like
Yeah.
they put it at a very low risk
It's not
threshold. So
zero.
I don't think we need to really
Yeah.
discuss it. I think that was a smart move, however, for the.
Okay, so the other one, though, that we had talked about before is it worth trying to talk about triple E with Dover?
When we
and then
talk
have
about it,
them-
we can just say, it's not as bad as, no, just kidding.
That's kind of,
So, okay, I will talk to
The
them, because
only-
they're eager to have a joint meeting so
The
that
only
we can
thing
go
with
over it.
Triple E is just remember that Sherborn is part of the Central Mass
We're in
Mosquito
different
Control
counties.
District,
Yeah.
and they're in the Norfolk
Then Dover,
County.
Yeah.
okay.
Although those two entities talk.
Yeah.
Right,
If
because we're
it's
Middlesex
something
and
that's-
they're,
Yeah, if it's something that's over close to the border of the two towns, they do work together, because they did last year.
And I'm not so sure that we're if they're going to be changing the spraying schedule, that's one thing. I don't think we're so far apart from Dover. They're concerned that the school continues what it did last year, which was not having any school events from X
At
amount of
dusk.
time before, and then in the, before sunset and in the evening, to minimize exposure, changing the football games
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So it might be confirming that, or maybe new information is coming out about something else, or understanding better what new protocols of personal protection might be being advocated, and how do we feel about communicating that to students. Whatever it is, some level of communication, so,
variance time.
7:30.
okay. All right. So it's 7:30, and we have a variance hearing for a septic replacement at 19 Dopping Brook.
Looks like Dan's just gonna, why don't you just bring everything up and plan on being here for a while?
It's gonna be like, I
It's 3
could
in a
do each
row.
of these in 10 minutes.
So did we have all the green cards?
Yes, we do.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay. Don't see any abutters.
Good evening, Dan McIntyre representing Peter and Evelyn Lipton, 19 Dopping Brook. They're in the process of selling their home and not passing Title V inspection criteria. So we will retain design with septic. So Dopping Brook here, heading back up to Western Avenue. Their existing system is in their front yard here. House is here. The well is kind of in the middle of the lot. We did some exploratory testing down here first, and we found a very dense, almost cemented type soil down in this area here. Similar to, or almost even worse than the one we placed directly across the street. So we switched gears and we went back, and we actually did find some decent soils up here. It's up higher. This is kind of the top of the hill here.
I got it.
So we found some soils that we were able to prefer up here. Groundwater table is still very high. Groundwater is, 30 inches, 24 inches over here. So we were able to get a septic system in. We're going to be asking for some waivers related to the groundwater table. What we did, we were able to reverse the piping in the house to come out the back, so set the tanks out in the back to avoid crossing a gas line and the water service line from the well, and set the system out here. We kept the required 150-foot distance from the neighbor's well. This lot is vacant. We would only stay 125 feet from the on-site well, which is an improvement over the 100 feet they have now.
Okay.
Is a well upgrading or, sorry?
It's a down gradient well. It's at the same natural grade. When we're all done, it's gonna be up and down grading because we're mounting it up.
So it will be,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're proposing an alternative technology, the Elgin system, to help treat the effluent a little bit better, because we're asking for that groundwater waiver. So the state does allow this system to be within 2 feet of the groundwater table.
Okay, so. Okay, this has the usual characteristics, a well, centrally located, knocks out a fair amount of the property, not good soils here, good soils there, and then, I can't tell what's back this way. Is this wooded back here?
This is wooded back here.
Okay.
There's actually a stream channel, there's a farm field up here, and then it's kind of a stream channel between.
Ah, okay. So,
Well, we do meet the offset to wetlands, that was reviewed by conservation,
Mhm.
or outside their jurisdiction.
okay. Does anyone have any particular questions, or, yes?
I have to recuse myself, I'm an abutter.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we'll go
Looks pretty
through them if you,
straightforward.
yeah, if you think of questions as we go along. And Mark, any particular comments before we launch on that?
I'm glad the engineer did his exploratory work and found himself an area that was more suitable than the front yard, so that does help the situation. The groundwater was high, so I respect the use of the Elgin to try to keep the mounding down. And they will be asking for waivers that will require deed recordings for the alternative system and a garbage grinder. And they'll ask not to design for a garbage grinder.
Okay. All right, so,
And we are staying at 4-bedroom house, we're staying at 4 bedrooms, so we're not increasing this.
That's correct.
and this is what's being replaced was the original system?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.01?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.02?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments? This one is similar to the last
Yep.
one. All in favor?
Aye.
We have a motion to grant a variance to 10.1B, and that's the well offset, and it is to the homeowner's own well, so.
That's correct.
And is Title V 100?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's more than Title
So moved?
V. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have some state level variances. So we have a motion to grant a variance to 15.4051H. And that is, relates to the IA technology that's being used.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have a motion to grant a variance to 15.4051J, which is, and we've seen this before, where the tank, where groundwater is high, and then the connections of the pipes leading into the below-ground tanks need to be secured.
Keep it as high as we can here, but the groundwater table is so high, we just can't. So we specify the tanks in accordance with the state regulations of an H20 tank, which is a heavy-duty tank, to prevent flotation, and then rubber connections at the pipes to prevent infiltration.
The McIntyre amendment? So, okay, did anybody move?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So I will close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
They are conditional to a couple things. First and foremost is the pre-construction, which is a normal process, but in this case, we'll also be discussing the requirement for a sieve analysis of the in-place C33 material, as well as the general Title V sand. The other thing is there is a note to ballast the tanks during construction in case they do indeed hit groundwater. But with that said, I would recommend approval based on that, and that they do a deed recording both for the innovative alternative technology as well as the garbage disposal. By not designing for it, they'll be restricting the site from having one. That would be my recommendation to the board.
Okay, so do we have a motion to that effect with the, for approval of the plans with the conditions
And
noted by
Madam Chair, I
Mark?
did have one more, I had it right here, I
Okay.
didn't see it, is to stake the septic system due to the proximity of both the on-site well and the abutters well, that the engineer stake that septic system before it's installed
Okay,
as a condition.
all right,
Because it's right in between the two wells, exactly to the distance.
Oh,
We're
okay.
very close, within a half a foot.
But he met the setback for the abutter.
With the abutter, but he needed the waiver, so if he got closer to the abutter, he'd be back here, so we always recommend to the installer that they don't stake it out, that they have
Oh.
Dan stake it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I do see that it's really
It's close.
right up against
Yeah.
that. So
In
that's
this case,
a
it
good
would be a
point.
requirement versus a recommendation.
Okay,
The board so wishes.
okay, and would that, where would that be?
As a condition of the approval,
Okay,
and I'll do it in pre-construction as well.
okay. All right. So, that as amended with the additional condition. Any move and second on that?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Darren, you sign.
See you in 10 minutes.
So, general chemical, oh, wait, actually, let's take
We're
care of
gonna
the
merge
agent's
business.
business.
Madam Chair, if I can skip number one, the engineer for that plan will be here at 8:30 to discuss the 8:30 appointment at
Okay.
24 North Main. So I would ask that 157 Farm Road be reviewed and ask the engineer to stay to indicate his overview on that plan.
Okay,
The second one is for discussion, the plan at 34 Great Rock Road. Applicant at the time was Stephen Kurz, was reviewed by both our department and the DEP. We discovered through an email that came in from a real estate agent to Conservation.
Conservation, and she
Valerie
forwarded it to me.
us, and what it was that there was discussion on what they were planning to do in the back lot, which is a barn, a large barn, a riding stable. And with that said, we indicated to the real estate agent that that back lot is part of 34 Great Rock Road, as presented on the septic plan.
As one
As one
contiguous
lot.
property.
And they said, no, it's not, and Ellen did some research on this to find out that it is two separate lots still, so the plan is right now being held in reserve until that's resolved. What they need to do is, according to the state, is either do easements on both lots to indicate the septic system on, we'll call it Lot A, which is 34 Great Rock, is on 0 Great Rock Road where the barn's located, the back lot. History had shown that that area in the back, they tested several areas back there back in the, I think it was the mid-90s, and they couldn't find a suitable spot for new construction, so that's why they just put a barn on that property with a well.
And the back, that
The
back
back lot.
lot is a 61B.
And it's a 61B, thank you, Ellen. So it's cause for the matter to be brought to the board to make sure we can either reserve or rescind the approval until they resolve the lot determination. Either make it one lot, which is a clean way to do it, dissolve the lot lines, because I think Claire said you can't grant an easement to yourself, and that would have to happen. And now, the unfortunate circumstances, there's a new owner. Stephen Kurz is no longer part of this process. So there's a new owner, and they sold the property prior to doing a Title V inspection.
Wait, what?
PPL,
He,
PLL
The new
LLC.
owners have sold it already?
No.
The Stephen Kerr
Kerr's.
sold it to someone
remember he
else.
wanted to do an emergency thing, and we
Yeah,
said that
yes.
that's not an emergency, so he just went ahead and sold
He
it?
sold it to
Without a
Pamela
Title
Lee
V.
Lupo Duggan, known as PLL LLC. So it's been sold to another person. I did explain,
Isn't that illegal?
they should have done a Title V inspection.
Yeah.
Because the system wasn't installed. They had designed for a septic system, but they didn't disclose or conduct a Title V inspection.
Oh.
Maybe they were thinking, well, we have the design plan, and that was our assumption, it failed, but that's not to be considered unless they do a Title V. If they had the septic repair installed, then they could have sold it.
Yeah.
Because it would have been a certificate to indicate
Right.
it's in compliance.
Compliance, yeah.
Right now, it's out of compliance, so that's the other issue at hand, is it was sold without a Title V inspection.
So can they can't occupy the house, right?
I don't know if they are. I have not gone up to see.
I don't think they're allowed.
I believe it is, because Claire went online. I guess they're using it as there's a riding school or
Does someone live
something
in the
going
front
on there.
house, though, at 34 Great Rock Road?
I don't know if
And
anybody's
no one
living
should be
there.
living in the barn,
Yeah.
because
But
they
they
don't have
must
any.
They're
have
using-
facilities in the
yes.
barn.
They can't, they had an out,
Facility.
no, they had
They
a
had
porta
porta-
toilet. They
okay.
could not put in a septic system, their soil was not suitable, so,
And
again, I haven't been in the
that's what-
barn, I'm not gonna say for sure there's nothing in
That's
there.
it. Claire was very concerned, are they using the facilities in the house as a part of the barn
Mm.
operation?
So, the other
But
point
we don't
go
know.
ahead, Ellen, I'm sorry.
Oh, my.
I'd recommend the
How
board
long?
also send a letter to the effect the plan has been rescinded and that they need to immediately conduct a Title V inspection and date it back to when the house was sold for the 2 years to repair, if it fails. If it doesn't fail, they're back to step one. And then, obviously, with the notice that the septic plan has been rescinded based on the fact it was not properly presented. The engineer has been informed of this.
Okay.
And said, we'll look into it, but that's GLM engineering. They have not gotten back to me yet on what their resolution will be. But it has cause for the red flag to go up and ask the board to rescind the approval until they can resolve the lot issue, and then in between time, to send them a letter indicating a Title V inspection was not completed, which is required by state code.
Okay, so, comments, anyone?
Boy.
Want to formulate a motion for this, other than, would you
I think we can, I mean,
be ready
I
to
would
write
keep
the letter
motion.
if we need?
I mean, the motion's simple, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
move to rescind the plan based on not being as presented.
Exactly.
And send a letter.
To rescind previous plan approval.
And the basis for that is really that the plan as presented was inaccurate.
Correct.
Because I think the narrative for this will be, oh my gosh, can you believe the board did this? But it's like, no, like, the rule that was violated was the state rule requiring the Title V inspection, which was the opportunity to catch that. We're now exercising our oversight responsibility to say, yeah, like, it's,
Shows that
Plus, it gives them that window of 2 years to repair if it is in failure.
Right.
You know, so they don't have that window right now because they never declared one way or the other if the system has failed.
Do we know why they came forward with the plan, a replacement system?
I have a feeling to sell it, there might have been some knowledge.
Oh, okay.
That's all I can think of, that someone knew. Something.
Yeah.
I don't want to go in the mind of someone, but we could ask
Is
GLM that
it
question.
being sold again?
It is
I
on the
don't know.
market.
It is,
It
yeah,
is
that's
on the
right, because the
market.
real estate, especially the back lot, I believe, is on the market, which is where
Oh,
the
which
barn's
is-
located.
that's the-
And the question they had is, can we put an apartment in the barn, and can we put up a house? And I explained to the real estate agent that, in an email, that, you know, you'd have to do soil testing, and it has been done in the past, but we give them the opportunity to keep exploring. But it wouldn't be a repair, because that barn was put in without any facilities, because they knew they couldn't do new construction on that side of the property.
Okay.
So there's
So
a
did you-
motion,
yeah, I
there
think
is a
there's a
motion,
motion.
I don't know if it was seconded.
Anyone want to second that?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
So should Mark draft a letter And we'll send a letter? Okay.
Can do that. If you want, I can pass it by the chair and make sure you're okay
Which
with
was
it.
the address that we're discussing?
34 Great Rock.
Thank you.
All right, I think it's 7:50. Dan, do you think it's 7:50?
Think so?
Listen up.
7:50, and we have a variance hearing for 109 North Main Street for a septic replacement. Do we have all the green cards? Excellent, okay.
I will say that the McIntyres provide all the green cards, everything, several days, well before the hearing date, and everything. It always goes very smoothly.
Perfect.
They give me the online, and we knew they were coming back.
You do have a letter on this property.
Dan McIntyre representing Carrie Martin, homeowner at 109 North Main Street. This particular property was subject to a previous septic approval several years ago
What I don't know.
for a three-bedroom house. It's currently a two-bedroom house, although there was a lot of back and forth about exactly what this was. There's an approved plan that shows it a one-bedroom house. The assessment called it a two-bedroom house. And during the previous septic approval, the board determined that they should call it a two-bedroom house. So that's kind of what we went on. We're asking for an additional bedroom. We're designing a Title V compliant system, but we are asking for a couple of Sherborn waivers or variances for this one here.
And did this fail a Title V, or?
It actually passes the Title V,
Okay.
but only for one or two bedrooms.
Mhm. Okay.
So they're, but
They would-
didn't it
they
say
would-
failure on here?
I think I did say failure,
Yeah, you
but
did.
we
It says
recently
failed
sent over-
system.
We recently sent over a Title V inspection to show that it actually passed.
Yeah.
But they would like to either add that third bedroom or be able to sell the house.
As a three-bedroom.
I feel like that's pretty tricky, right? I mean, in terms of being consistent with past boards, because this is then a past system requiring variances for new construction.
But it's really kind of failed because the house is what it is now. So they're not proposing to modify the house right now. But it's inconsistent with what the old approved system was designed for. So even though it doesn't
But they
fail
bought-
Title
If they
V.
bought a two-bedroom house and they paid taxes
Right.
on a two-bedroom house and then they're selling it, it's now a three-bedroom house because it's always been a three-bedroom house.
The Title V inspection report shows the septic design for one bedroom, and that it's
One.
actually a three-bedroom now.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's failed it's
It-
past Title V in terms of its performance characteristics, but
Right,
Title
but-
V in a non-failure state said it's a three-bedroom house with a one-bedroom system. As a one-bedroom system,
Right.
the system passes.
With a garbage grinder.
Yeah. But they didn't actually change the house
No.
itself.
Right.
So
This
that's-
owner did
yeah,
not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we don't know when those extra bedrooms came on,
So
or extra
when-
bedrooms,
Was
so.
this the
But
property?
it
There's one
passes
that we
Title
had
V for three
extended
bedrooms.
No,
septic
it
plan
passes for
Yeah.
one.
And it was,
Well,
It just
This-
passed.
this is all we
There's
looked at
no-
the minutes, we're
there's no
like,
past
this is what it
failure.
is, this is what it is.
Oh, no, no,
That's-
that's a different one.
It's
Okay.
Yeah, that's a
definitely
different one.
groundwater, it's other things besides bedrooms. But Title V
It's on
inspection has to
Kendall
do
Lab.
research to determine what it is. It may, on file, it's a one-bedroom house. But I think technically they do use it as a three-bedroom house.
Right, but like, I guess so for me, like, the most compelling piece is that the Title V on that failing from what fails Title V says it's a one-bedroom system for a three-bedroom house. Like, to me, that feels like the basis, if anything's consistent, to say, well, it doesn't meet a failed Title V, like, it does represent the discord that is the simple.
Yeah, no,
Right.
exactly.
Is
and for me,
Title
that's
V
easy.
is not as rigorous as for all performance characteristics.
And so I think for me, like, the struggle up to say, I've got a passing system, I'd like you to grant new variances to change the bedroom count. In this case, they're saying, I'm not, like, for me, it gets much harder to change the footprint of the house. if we're like, we wanna do this to do +1, we're adding a bedroom, what we're now saying is really a 3-bedroom house. Right, like if we're adding a bedroom and we're saying right now the basis for making it a 3-bedroom house is that it's really a 3-bedroom house. We're gonna make it a 4-bedroom house, but it was a 1-bedroom house, like.
But they're trying to change the septic to be adequate for the house that's actually
Right,
there.
So that part I feel okay with. I
Yeah.
struggle if we're like, we wanna do
Oh,
3
going from
plus
1 to
1.
3?
No, I think
yeah.
if you're like, I wanna make a system that fits my house, so I can sell my house as my
Right.
house is. And we're saying, even Title 5 recognized 1-bedroom system, 3-bedroom house. But was there a question of adding on a room?
No.
Well, not yet, but
But I would say
I think a
like,
new homeowner could put it on addition, but you'll get a chance to review the floor plan to make sure it stays the
right. So I think for me, like, I feel not ambivalent from a slippery slope standpoint on, we're making a septic system that is more adequate for the houses that exist without a change of footprint. That passes the gut check for me.
I also view this as they're already getting their +1 as a result of, because it's
It
a
wasn't two.
2-bedroom according to the assessors, so that's
Yeah.
kind of one thing they have to go on. So they can't go to 4 bedrooms unless they find a way to make it
Right.
fully.
So the
regulations, so-
design you're talking about here is for a 3-bedroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Does it
Which
have a
is
garbage
also-
grinder or no garbage grinder? Excellent.
3-bedroom is also the minimum recommended by Title 5 design as well.
Okay.
And I also, like, I think if we sort of look at the, like, for me, the fact that there's no new construction is the key piece for it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the piece that I would say, the take home for like in the minutes and the rest of it is like, this is to write, we're building a better system that's replacing a system that's inadequate to the house it's built. That passes the gut check. I think if you say we can add a room and not get to 4-bedroom, great. But I kind of agree with Joe, this feels like this takes it a +1.
So here's my concern, though. It didn't fail Title V. Is there a compelling reason that this replacement will actually take place? Because if it doesn't take place, then we have a house still out there that, however it got there, is at a
But I don't think we can,
at
I
a
think,
loading it shouldn't be at.
But we
So-
shouldn't not approve it, we shouldn't not approve
I
it
think we should
based on
approve it to
that.
make it available. I
Yeah.
don't think that our existing regulations let us compel compliance with the approved plan that we think is superior to baseline state.
So,
Like, it's not like the cesspool regulation.
right, so I agree that that's tough. So do we ask them to put a deed restriction indicating that the house currently, as we call it, a 2-bedroom?
It's
can't be used
non-conforming,
as-
basically,
As any more than 2 bedrooms, can't be,
unless
you know,
the.
new
unless
owners
the-
should, even though we don't control people's behavior, but someone should be informed that unless the septic system is upgraded as, you know,
Well-
something.
But aren't we, the question is, do we approve what is in front of us as viable and, you know, consistent with regulatory, you know, sensible
Yeah.
protocols? And I think the answer is yes. Now you're talking something different about the next thing. So, I mean, wouldn't they need to come back to us?
Well, I would say if the house does not have this system in place,
But then there'd be no deed
should someone
recording.
know,
But I think
if
that-
it's about to go on the market, should someone know that it is?
But I think if you chose not to use a
Inadequate.
plan, you could also choose not to do the deed recording, right?
Which is
Right.
what 34 Great Rock
Right.
Road did. They haven't done the deed recordings and never did the plan.
Huh.
They had
So-
an
oh, they were
approval.
just
Had
able
an
to
approval.
show someone
They had
Right.
an
they
approval.
had an
Right.
approval, plans hadn't been released. but-
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
but
they haven't
now
done
it.
they're gonna come to us and we're gonna say, this is what you
But
need
it-
to
but-
do.
Yeah.
But it's a prior seller who's now like, yeah, I'm gone.
But when a buyer comes in and does their due diligence, they're gonna see the assessor's record that shows it as a 2-bedroom house.
Okay,
Their attorney will look at the Title V report, which shows it as a 1-bedroom house by
Okay.
design, 3-bedroom actual.
Mhm.
So they're gonna know they've got an undersized septic system. So
Okay.
they're not going into this.
Yeah.
as long
I
as
would-
they
I would
right,
keep
do
it-
the due diligence, which.
I'd rather
is
just
what
keep
they
it
do.
focused on the questions at
Right.
hand.
Okay.
Right. But I do
So-
think being consistent, because I wouldn't want a future homeowner to say, we did this,
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't failed. And I think the key point here is, same house. Like, if people wanna improve their septic system,
I can give the board a little history here. Septic plan was designed and a disposal construction permit was issued back in 1970 for a one-bedroom. Then they came back with another plan to replace that one-bedroom septic to go to 3 bedrooms.
The
And
same
that
owner?
is, I don't-
No,
different owner.
No, I know not Carrie,
But not the
but-
same owner as today. Back in 2005, another owner came in to revise the system to a 3-bedroom design,
And
and the board approved that plan.
it never was
And it never got
implemented?
installed. Then in 2006, the board reviewed a building application. And what it indicated was that the application, I noted it was a 2-bedroom house, and noted, there was a note that it had 7 rooms. The assessor noted it as having 5 rooms because they didn't count the 2 bedrooms in the basement.
rooms, yeah.
So the assessor right now, are they indicating those 2 rooms in the basement for
It's
7
showing
rooms, Dan?
100% use
So
in the
there's,
basement.
so in
they're-
2006, it was determined to be a 2-bedroom with 5 rooms, but there were 7 rooms in the house.
Yeah.
If there are 7 rooms presently in that house today, and it does get designed for a 3-bedroom, they have to stay with the bedroom, with the room count they have.
Yeah.
So it's, you know,
Yeah, it's kind of, there's definitely 2 bedrooms in the basement. But the first floor, it's kind of an open concept, the kitchen, living, dining room area is kind of one big area. You know, the furniture is arranged to make it look like a couple of rooms, but it
so
depends
they
on
may
the-
be in a situation where they might have 6 rooms or 7, and if they do, they're not gonna be able to add.
But I think.
They're not
that's
asking
down-
I
to.
think we
Not
can
right
say
now.
the current proposal that we're approving
Right,
is.
for
same
3
footprint,
bedrooms.
Here's a piece.
Yeah.
I think we should also make explicit that we think this includes the sort of historical +1, just because I don't think the intent is to say, oh, we can do this and this and this and just steadily do it over time. But I don't think we have to
And
put more
that's-
conditions in that.
That's our intent when we submitted the plan,
Yeah.
we're getting a +1.
Yep.
Because it is 2 bedrooms now, and we're asking for a 3rd.
All right, so going back in history, there was a 1-bedroom system installed. I don't know at that time, in the 70s, whether there was specification about extra sizing for garbage grinder
Yeah.
or not.
The design flow was 150 gallons for the 1-bedroom.
And do we know if there was that 50% increase?
I can look at the
Should it be
plan.
165 or whatever?
It was 150.
I
No,
think they,
Yeah.
where the regulations would it have required that it be more than 150? I'm just wondering
let's
if
see.
The
we should
application.
be asking them to remove the garbage grinder.
They use a 900 square
they'll
foot
have
bed
to.
back there.
Hmm?
They utilized a 900 square foot bed. I'd have to see
But I think that,
You know, if it
yeah,
was
right now, they're
for
not intending a garbage grinder.
addition of
correct?
a garbage
My
grinder.
plan calls for removal.
Let's see.
Removal.
And so that would be a deed restriction.
Yep.
Right.
Yes, so I understand about that. I'm just concerned that if it was grandfathered in that that was okay to build it that size for 1-bedroom with a garbage grinder at 150 gallons, then that would stand. But if that wasn't the case, then that should come out.
I'm
Well,
not
but I
sure
think
they
that was
changed the
kind of- yeah.
footprint of the house, have they?
I don't believe.
I think they just moved, to change things inside and like finish the basement, so it's not, that makes it kind of complicated too.
I'm just saying, going back to the, separate from this, we have knowledge that someone has a garbage grinder and a
Yeah,
very
but I
small
think- but I
system.
said
think-
he
but I
already
think
said
the-
he's not
the garbage
gonna-
grinder's coming out.
Yeah.
That's only if this gets implemented. In the meantime,
I don't
if
think
they
we,
don't.
I don't think we can go out and take the
Where
garbage
can we-
grinders or they're gone. I think the garbage grinder's in their house now, it's a non-compliant system, like, I think it's there.
So is it better to just keep the language that it's a failed system, and that way it has to be
But it's
addressed?
Not failed by any other.
I know, but
And
it's,
Darrell, to answer your question.
it says it on the,
It does say it on mine, yeah.
Yeah.
right.
Back in-
I was
is it better to not correct that?
And I think we correct it, I think our goal is to say we wanna make it accurate. I think we have a
Non-compliant.
I mean, this is a perfect example of when people say, it passed Title V, why isn't that fine? You're like, this passed Title V. Nobody should say this is fine. It's a 1-bedroom system with a garbage grinder.
That
For a
is correct.
three-bedroom house, yeah.
The past Title V. This is why we've got local regs, and I think this is the opportunity to say, looking at the intention of what our regulations are, I think we're clearly moving towards something that's safer for the homeowner and the butters with the proposed change. And I think that making that as easy as possible for current or future homeowners is our best way to get a system that's in compliance. I don't think we have a way to remediate the current system or to apply pressure, because they could just say, yeah, I've got the plan, I'm gonna just hold it right here, as they did in 2005, and I think they can do that, and that's.
Well, they may do that, but
But
in
that's
order,
fine.
in order for the real estate agent to sell it as a potential three-bedroom home.
They need to address it,
septic,
right.
They're gonna have the permit. They're not
Right.
gonna get a permit in hand unless they do the
Right, but
deed recording.
my point is, even if people make bad choices, this is America and people can make terrible choices. And so I think for us, the best we can do is to say we want to make it as easy as possible to make a good choice, which is pass the plan, say it's a three-bedroom system. But I don't think we can compel them to do anything as part of the package.
That is correct.
Okay, so.
Well, the reason I say it's correct is, well, first of all, the size from 1970 was 100 gallons for the bedroom and 50% for the garbage grinder, making it one, that's what they had
Okay.
back in that
All
era.
right.
But I was
If it
gonna say.
qualified for
yeah.
under 1970, then that's fine. I would say that the board, when things have come up, like when people want to add on, when they want some other approval for something else, and there's a problem identified, so let's say the requirement in 1970 was for something over 150, and they only had 150, and they have a garbage grinder, issuing a new permit is the time to say you need to correct this outstanding issue before you get your new permit. But maybe once the deed recording is in place saying no garbage grinder, then they need to abide by that immediately. Is that the case?
Well,
Even
these-
in
You
the
can't put
absence
a, you
of
can't put a
this-
deed
These
recording
are-
on for a current condition. That's not allowed. That's,
That is correct. The
you
only-
cannot do it, so it only can prohibit something that is not present. So
So-
you can't do that.
Yeah.
So the plan won't get released, which
Until
means
they-
the deed recording may never be
Can you
conducted.
share with your client the importance and the deep and abiding concern we have about the garbage grinder and say, we are happy to, like, because I think what we're really saying is we're really concerned about the current pattern
Because
of
if a
use.
new buyer comes
Right.
and they
We are so
proceed
glad
and
that-
there's still this really undersized, seriously undersized
Right.
and ancient system, that
It's not-
just it's
Right.
not fair to the
accessible,
neighbors,
right?
No,
basically,
it's a
right?
leaching bed,
So,
which we don't allow.
It is a leaching bed?
Leaching bed.
So is that prohibited anyway?
The state doesn't recommend leaching beds,
No, we
and
went,
they're
we
not
went, we went
allowed.
practice on this one.
No, I'm talking about the 1970 plan, Dan.
I was only 11 years
No,
old.
so I mean-
Don't worry, Dan, I would've let you know if you designed for a
So
bed.
so there's Title
Wasn't you.
V, but there's also our own Sherborn regs, which says after X date, we didn't allow cesspools. Do we include leaching beds in that, or no?
The cesspools.
All right.
So I think that we're doing our best to make it possible for people to make good choices, and that's the best we can do. And I think like doing that, like they hired you, they're doing this, I think that's the best we can do. And I think also just being consistent with the prior board, like the Board of Health in 2005 with the same sets of rules we had today, approved a three-bedroom plan, it
Yeah.
seems reasonable for us to continue to do so.
Yeah.
Well, and if they want to add on, that's the enticement, because if they want to add another room, and they, right now, will be locked into what they have based on the fact that Title V says it's a one-bedroom septic, even though they have more, they can't do anything at that house at this point.
But they can't,
Until
let's not
they
even talk
install
about that.
it.
Let's not go
So-
there.
Can't
Do we
anyway.
have a
Yeah, we're not
motion
going
to
there.
approve the plan?
Oh, okay,
conditional to-
that's fine, I'm sorry.
So
Well,
moved.
yeah, but we have
haven't
variances.
voted on the
Yeah,
variances.
you do have
yet.
variances, yes.
Let's focus on
You wanna do that
those.
first before we,
Yeah, approve the plan?
and what do we need to do to correct the failed system language? Is that just?
Reissue.
Okay,
I can correct that for you since I'm home now.
perfect.
Okay, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to wait, have we discussed? Yes,
Well,
you have explained
so,
some
yeah.
things. Is there anything else we need?
So, this is the existing house, there's a tank right out here, which goes over to a leaching field over this area here. The original, well, the approved one that you did in 2006 had a system generally in this area here, but it was a different type of system down this tree here, which is I think 48-inch, very historic tree that everybody wants to save. So we redesigned it using an alternative technology to get it into a smaller footprint to save that tree. I guess the only reason I got involved is, when I got the call, I said, well, go back to the original engineer that approved it. But he has retired, and gone out of business, so.
Not surprised, yeah.
So that's why I'm here.
Because you like these challenging things, so.
So we're proposing an alternative technology. We are meeting the 4-foot criteria for Title V. We are asking for that 1-foot offset for the 5-foot for Sherborn, using the alternative technology. 1,500-gallon septic tank, pump tank going up to the D blocks, and then we've got 4 leaching trenches here.
Okay, so let's say that's really the only variance that you need in the end,
Right.
so.
So we're asking for the offset from 5 feet to 4 feet, and then we're asking for the high groundwater condition being less than 5 feet below grade, which, based on my reviews previously, is
It's unclear that that's even true.
right. It's a little more than 5 feet, but he asked for it back in 2006, and it was granted, so
Okay.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, and Mark, any comments on, you know,
On
is
the
there
waivers, no,
other
based on the conditions.
place to locate this is the best place?
And it was pretty much based
the
on
wetland, the
previous.
well is back here. We're meeting the 150-foot offset. We're meeting the 100-foot well or 125-foot for the septic.
Okay, and I can't tell what, so there's more property
The
back
property
here
line
somewhere?
comes over here.
Okay.
There's a garage, a
Oh.
separate garage right here.
Okay.
So there's really no land over here.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.01?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.02?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are, and the previous conditions, same here, pre-construction with the discussion on the required sieve analysis per our code, as well as, again, I recommend they stake this system, that the engineer do it, because you have that 150 distance, so instead of it being a choice, I'd recommend the engineer stake the system. And then the only other two is the deed recordings for both the IA technology and the garbage disposal,
Okay,
And I'll revise my letter.
to state it
Okay.
here.
And communicate to the homeowners, garbage grinder, no good.
if they're planning to continue to use the existing system. So, okay. Do we have a motion to approve the plans with the conditions as noted by the
So
agent?
moved. Just got ahead of myself.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Hey,
8:10.
don't go
Aye.
far.
One more.
Okay.
We're cranking along.
So, do we, I guess I don't really have to announce too much, but we have a variance hearing for 129 Hollis for a septic replacement. So, do we have all the green cards? Yes. Excellent.
So you guys moving?
If you want to, I know I asked the same.
Oh. Yeah,
This all.
yeah. It is right down the street, so.
So you're certainly welcome to come up while the engineer explains things, but, you know, up to you.
I explained it to him once before.
Okay.
134 feet from,
I'll leave it to the expert, he's very capable.
But do you have a garbage grinder?
yeah.
Won't after this one.
No, but it says that,
It says 134 to the on-property well.
So this is Hall Street here, intersection of Western Ave coming right up
To
here.
this point, but then if you have
The
extra.
existing system is right off into the side yard here. It's a gravity system, it's down kind of deep.
To this
We
one.
did soil testing and the groundwater table is very high here, so the existing system is in the groundwater table. The well is over behind the house over here. So we tested up in this front corner here to try to find an area that would get us at least 125 feet from the well. We also tested, it's a very deep lot, it goes way back. So we went back.
That's
went way to the
134.
back and did testing back there. Groundwater table was very high.
Yeah, yeah,
So we thought this was the best way to get a system in.
Well, that
Kind of
is
blend in the
a lot
grades.
higher too than here.
It
so-
is, yeah, yep.
Okay.
So we're proposing a 5-bedroom home, so we've got a 2,000-gallon tank, pump chamber, going up to an alternative technology system. We've designed it to be Title V compliant. We are asking for a couple of waivers on the Sherborn regulations. You know, in order to use a new system for this, we had to prove that we could put a conventional system in, a 5-bedroom conventional system, which we did do. We provided that in the calculations to Mark. But it did change the yard considerably. So we went with technology to get us a little bit smaller footprint, a little bit lower profile, kind of fit it in. Although we still are raising the front yard side to meet the groundwater challenge. So this house was subject to some discussion years back where it's been assessed as a 5-bedroom house. It had a 4-bedroom design. They wanted to do some modifications on the inside of the house. And they did those modifications, but they had to take down some walls to make the room count work.
Mm-hmm.
So now that they really have to put a new septic system in, we've designed it for 5-bedroom, so it's a true 5-bedroom house, and they can rearrange, put those walls back up now, so that's the intent of the whole thing here.
Okay, so this would be the +1 now? Or you're saying it was 5 before, but the system was 4?
System
I'm
was
confused,
4.
yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
just the
Right,
so this is the
okay.
plus
So now it's
one
gonna
blend
be-
of
This is the +1 to get them. a
Now it's gonna
legal
be
Okay.
what it should be.
Right.
Yeah, you show us 9 rooms, which is a
Even though they've
4.
been taxed as a 5-bedroom house for years and years and years.
Oh, really? Oh,
And if I may clarify, when we bought the house in 1997, we bought it as a 5-bedroom house. It was only 12 years, 10 to 12 years later, when we wanted to finish the basement. And that's all we did, was to finish the basement. But when we came for the permits, it was discovered at that point, after we'd been in the house for 10 or 12 years, that the septic system from 1970
Was for
originally
4 bedrooms.
was 4-bedroom capacity.
So you actually took down interior walls?
Yeah, there was a piece of a wall between the master bedroom and a small bedroom upstairs
Mm-hmm.
that we took down to make a kind
Suite.
of bedroom office
Mhm.
suite.
Mhm.
And we want to have the option to put that wall back up. It's, what we took down is probably only 4 feet wide,
Mm-hmm.
3 feet wide maybe, to put that back up and restore it to the 5-bedroom house we bought and we thought we were buying first.
This happens a lot.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened back in the 70s. So our intent here is to make this a legal 5-bedroom.
Mhm.
And so they can sell the 5-bedroom, use 5 bedrooms.
okay.
So the couple of waivers we're asking for are,
Depth to groundwater and well offset.
yes,
And it's
On-property well.
offset to that.
yes.
Their own
So we're meeting this
A butter.
typical 125, but it is a downgrading well, so we don't have that extra 25 feet. And all the abutters wells are more than 150
How,
feet well.
how come it says downgrading well offset to be 175 in soils with, so is that the
All
perk
kinds of
rate?
mistakes.
Is this one less than 3 or no?
Well, you have
No,
2
no,
rates.
No, you're right, it's 175. This is
Okay.
The majority of the soil is less than 2 minutes per inch.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So you're asking for 134 instead of 175?
Yes.
And Title 5 is 120,
Title 5 is 100.
even for this
Yes.
perk rate, so they didn't differentiate?
And there is a design here that shows it to be installed with partially in the subsoil, and that perked at 4 minutes per inch. So there's a little justification to allow it. I don't work for Dan, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's a good another point is that it will be slowed down to some degree.
It's further away than the existing system that's in the way.
The existing system, and this
Yes.
particular system is designed to allow a 2-foot groundwater offset as
Yeah.
well, so we're getting some enhanced treatment of the system as well.
Perfect.
How many feet, do you have 2 feet, or is there different than 2
Well, we
feet?
designed it for 5 feet, we met your regulations.
No, but you're asking for a
Okay.
variance.
No, but that's
Well,
just,
because
yeah.
your groundwater is within
5 feet of the surface, okay, but you're not asking for the offset,
No.
there, okay.
Yes, this is, I'm sorry, that's the opposite.
Perfect.
Okay.
I got a perfect look at
Okay, so, so Mark, you've already commented, anything else that we?
No, again, I think for the conditions that exist, I think the plan's appropriate.
Okay, yes, not a lot of options, usual spatial challenge that you have so much fun with all the time. All right, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.02?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And do we have a motion to grant a variance to 10.1BC, and that's offset to an on-site well? We prefer, I mean, in this case, I don't know that you had a choice, trade-off between a neighboring well, but at least when people are close to their own septic system, how you manage that kind of have bearing on your water quality. So it's more in your hands than if it was a reduced offset to a neighboring well. So just with that precaution that if you want any guidance, someone in the office can point you to, how to maintain the health of your septic system. So, okay. So did we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
And I'm gonna recommend the same thing for this plan, that in pre-construction, it be discussed and required that the engineer stake this as well, because it's the distance to the well was agreed by the board at 134, so that shouldn't vary. By staking it by the engineer, it will help the situation. Analysis for.
Stake the well.
Stake
Just stake the well?
Stake the septic system, soil absorption
okay.
system. That's for all 3 elements. Stake the leaching area, soil absorption system, they're interchangeable. And the sieve analysis for the soil. The materials brought on site. And then last but not least, the deed recordings for both the innovative alternative technology, which is a geomat, a little different from what you've seen one prior, as well as the garbage grinder, because it's not being designed.
Okay, so do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And do we want to try to do 157 Farm Road? Was that the one?
Yeah, the engineer's here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we could do that before the 8:30.
So I think we're doing the 157 Farm Road.
Yeah. And
So,
This is the one we've discussed before, right?
oh, we've seen this a few times,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm like,
here's the
wait.
request. I'll explain it after.
Show the board.
Whoops.
What we had, where we've been. It all started back in September.
This one.
Is Darrell part of this discussion?
I don't know.
Oh, is she-
Which one? 157
Is she-
Farm Road. You may
Why did we
wanna-
do that?
You may want to drop by.
I don't know.
This is a series of plans that we did get, and I'll show you the newest one. The board did review this plan. It's in the January.
Oh, can I share with you?
Of course. The plan was reviewed by the Board of Health back on October 2nd. And Paul was asked to show the current structure, if it's one well serving this structure at 157. And Paul did upgrade the plan to show that the existing water supply line to be capped inside the house. That was a requirement of the board to make sure it wasn't being serviced by 2 wells. and that it have a complete plan, so he shows a side plan here as well as the property that it's going to serve and the septic system on that property, which is 157, and then there's a scale, smaller scale of the
That's the new
properties.
well, yeah.
I'm
One of the
confused.
things
I don't
you guys
understand.
brought
Is
up
this the new well or the,
This is for a replacement well.
Right, is
It's
that-
a new well because the house was originally served by the other property.
Yeah, there was a house that was serving,
Both, this house.
I mean, a well that was serving.
right, so that well that's shown here is the proposed new well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, it
yes, it
is.
is.
This is the proposed.
Yes,
new-
yes, yeah.
Just outside the radius, okay.
What's
That one, I'm just mumbling to myself.
The radius.
Yeah, I know. That one's gonna
And that's
be-
the old plan you're looking at.
Yeah.
If you want, I can get you the
Oh.
new. There were a few revisions. I apologize, you're looking at a previous plan, I should have left it there. This
Yeah, so
is-
which one of these is the
This is
new
the most
plan?
recent plan, right here,
Okay.
January 2nd.
All right,
New well,
yep.
the information that was required to show the different lots in 157, and I presume that other property was it this one across the street, Paul, the farmhouse?
I believe so. I
Yeah.
think what the direction you gave me was you wanted vicinity maps to be at a minimum of 1 inch is 300 feet.
Yeah.
But on a 186 acre property, 1 inch equals 300 doesn't show much.
Well, and the board just wanted to know what's happening to the existing well, because they thought you were abandoning it, but obviously, from
Oh.
talking to the owner, Mr.
Right.
Dudley Willis, is it?
Yes,
He indicated, though, that's serving his house across the street.
right.
So that's why you're capping it off in the house and putting a new well in, so each house will have its own
Yeah,
separate
he
well.
wanted it to have its own
Yep.
water supply.
That does make sense. So-
It does or doesn't?
It does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Stick with the new plan, I'll get these all
No, and we
decked
did
so
want
that-
to see the whole property to understand, so just,
Yeah.
how it fit together. So
Yeah.
this is all.
So there's no abandonment requirements other than to seal it off from,
To seal that off in the house.
yeah.
And drill the new well and meet all the well requirements.
So if you seal it off only at the house versus closer to the well, you have this whole dead end of pipe, which is potential, then it's just got water stagnating and they're right for bacteria growth, which are problems, which then could impact back to the well, if you're still using the well for.
Well, only if it's leaking. Originally, I had proposed to shut it off outside, but Mark said it's better to shut it off inside, so I changed that. But regardless of where you shut it off, cap it, it's a dead end. It's not going to be impacting this well.
No, but I guess we're worried about, what about the other,
The well,
the other
what is it
well that's
connected to?
servicing,
Yeah.
is give a big dead leg
Yeah.
that's
Right.
gonna not
Well,
have water flowing
Take
through
it
it.
back one step even further. When I originally proposed this project, I proposed that we cut it off at the other house.
I think that makes sense. Can't we just do both? So that way it's,
Certainly.
right?
That makes sense.
Why don't we just do
Cut it
both?
off at both.
Yeah.
Wait, so I guess I missed it.
Here's
It's
new-
being cut off, is that well going to be used for anything? Because you said it's
That-
not being abandoned.
This well is gonna go here, other well goes to other house.
Yeah, it goes
The
to
other well's already out,
170,
yeah.
it goes to
The
177.
other well is currently going to both these houses, you're
Yes.
cutting it off. Is there a way to cut it off at the well? And I bring it up because I've had clients who have the money to do flushing, but it's still hard to clean those out, and periodically something happens, and there's a reason
It
why
sounds
the
like you're
water
happy to
that's
cap it.
stagnating in
You're
the
happy
dead
to
end.
cut it at both ends.
Yeah, let's just cut it, if we cut it at both ends, it's fine.
Yeah,
Let's just do
perfect,
that.
That way no water will
Yeah,
filter
yeah.
into the house
Right,
either.
right.
perfect.
Okay,
Sounds
problem
good.
solved.
Thank you.
That can be a condition of the approval
Yeah.
if the board so wishes.
Yeah,
that
I think that makes sense.
Existing well line that comes in from 177, be cut off both at the inside house of 157 Farm Road.
And at the
well
originating,
at
yeah.
177 Farm Road.
Yeah. Okay,
That's-
That sounds
seems to
good.
be-
Okay. So, do we need to vote on that?
And we do have conservation
Or you're all
approval
set.
too now, just so you know, we're waiting on conservation approval as well.
Mark, you need a vote from us on this? or you-
Yes, I
Okay.
would ask that you vote to approve this well for 157 Farm Road with the condition that the the existing well line that comes from 177 Farm Road be cut off both at the well at 177 Farm Road and then cut off again and capped off inside the house at 157 Farm
That makes sense.
I'll say so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Excellent. And we are up to 8:30.
Perfect, so 24 North Main.
Road. One on Main, the engineer's here for the fall, you came at a good time for all this one stuff. Which has arrived, as we know.
Okay, you may recall last time I was here, there was some discussion, folks had gotten an email from Claire Golden, I haven't seen it, but Ellen has since sent it to me. The issues that the board brought up was, it wasn't clearly stated on the plan what the proposed use was, what the design requirements of the proposed design flows would be, and also you were concerned that we hadn't stated emphatically that the second and third floors would be used only for storage and there wouldn't be any public access. So I think I've complied with all those requirements, I've put all those requirements on the plan. The design as currently proposed is up to 22 chairs, 20 gallons per day per chair flow, which brings us up to the existing capacity of 440 gallons per day. It's stated here that, you know, they'll be using paper plates and plastic dishware, there won't be any of the glassware, so.
So it's the fast food.
They're technically going to be
One use.
classified as fast food.
Yes,
Yeah, so single use.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. So, those were the requirements of the board. Proposal, the original proposal started out, and the only modifications we're making to the outside to the septic system is to add a 1,000-gallon grease trap to accommodate any waste in the food stream, which is requirement on a facility that's like a fast food. So we're now providing a grease trap, 1,000-gallon capacity with a discharge to the fast septic tank.
Is that conventional, Mark?
The grease tank,
Yeah.
the grease tank standard is being met, correct, per Title V.
Right, so as long as it's treated in the grease tank, it can discharge
And
to
then,
the.
so it's a dedicated line from any sink or grease-producing equipment,
To the
dishwasher,
tank.
to the septic grease tank, and now go back into the septic tank.
And I would
It's a
imagine
separator.
The next step,
Grease into
assuming
septic.
that you approve this, then
And
you would
what's,
submit the plans to modify the building to accommodate the sinks and those renovations on the first floor.
can you just refresh my memory, I see the existing cesspool, how does that fit in?
That was on there when, this is the original construction plan, they constructed
That's-
this, that was the
Yeah.
cesspool.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
Not in use?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I forgot, what's the mechanism for ensuring no use
We were
beyond
talking
storage for the
Deed
second and third?
recording.
Just a deed recording?
Yeah.
And is there going to be some kind of like lock or just so that people who are using the coffee shop area can't access those areas for things?
Well,
or-
we state here that the public won't have access to the second and
Okay.
third floor, so that'll be a locked door of some sort.
Okay, okay.
It was to be used as storage space only, so deed recording was recommended. I'm reading
Yeah,
a
no, I
letter from
remember that.
Claire as well,
Yeah.
and
It's
also,
my understanding now, I haven't been up there in a long time, but there were several rooms up there.
Mm-hmm.
The applicant's perfectly willing to take down petitions if you're more comfortable with that. It's just gonna be open store. They'd probably be heated. I would think there would be paper plates and all that sort of thing, but maybe some of the perishables that they would serve at the coffee shop would probably be stored up there as well.
Perishables, wouldn't those be in the fridge?
Again, I don't know, what a
Yeah.
coffee shop.
Yeah.
so.
I'd say
yeah,
if it's
I would hope
perishable,
so.
that would
That's
be
what
one of
their
the
extra
I don't
fix is
think-
gonna be.
Lots and lots of donuts.
Yeah.
So the non-perishables, dry food storage.
Yeah,
type
that
of
could be
stuff.
up there, yeah.
That's what I thought.
That sounds
Well,
better.
That's a good clarification.
And Mark, you've had a chance to go over the plans.
Yeah, the actual plan, I was ready to suggest approval, but we had to make sure, as the board indicated, that all the other areas were resolved, including having that Title V inspection report, deciding how to handle that extra 4-bedroom space, the second and third floor. So I would recommend approval of this grease interceptor, grease tank external. Conditional 2, a deed recording to define the space outside of the coffee shop as storage, so that it's never to be more than 22 seats, and that includes outside seating. And that would be my recommendation to the board. It will go through the building application process, and we'll get another chance to review it at that time.
Okay.
And so this is just my first like new restaurant space in the time that I've been on the board. So in terms of count, like, so it sounds like room count doesn't apply in this case. And so it's really that restriction of the second and third floor to say, this is an eating space, this is
And
an
the-
office
and the
space,
seating.
this is
Strictly
exclusively
storage.
storage.
And
it's a
22
Is
chairs,
it. Like
with
that-
22 chairs with the single-use stuff.
Right.
It was only 12 chairs if they were gonna have like dishwashers and blah, blah, blah.
Exactly, so it has to be it has to be it has to be operated as a fast food facility, which means all single-service items, no dishware, no coffeeware. So if there's anything, it'll be just washing equipment. So with that said, that keeps the flow down, and that would be another condition of the approval.
And that's really a state regulation that we're.
Well, it's on this plan as being designed as for a
But that
fast
20
food.
isn't like us coming up with it, that's from the state to say
Yeah, the
this is a
state
fast food
designed
line.
that design flow, that's
Okay.
correct, it is in their design flow
Unlike
chart.
most buildings in town, the system has a meter, so you'll be able to check the flow.
And are they prohibited from having a garbage grinder? Does that 20,
Good point, that doesn't come up.
Yeah, it doesn't, because I think they sometimes have it as part of that design. It's not in the defined definitions of Title V, so.
But if you had a garbage, so I guess it's saying, like, what we're saying is, the fact that we derive our 20 gallons per seat for a fast food establishment is driven by Title V. Title V is agnostic as to whether that fast food restaurant included or didn't include a garbage grinder, and our rules for garbage grinder design that we do for bedrooms, we can't extrapolate to a fast food restaurant. Is that the issue?
Yeah, I would suggest, if the board so wishes, and I think it's a good suggestion or requirement, you're offering approval of something with a reduction in flow.
Especially if you're
is to-
saying we're having all single-use items, like thinking about what's the use case for a garbage grinder when you're not doing dishes.
Exactly. I would hope they put all their organics in the trash and not into the septic grease tank or the septic system.
In your approval, the fact that you don't want them to have a garbage grinder?
Yeah,
I think
so
so,
just-
because you're,
well, I'm wondering if they currently have a deed restriction against a garbage grinder,
Oh,
and
no.
that
It was a-
that continues.
It was a beauty salon before.
No, but before that, it was,
I think it
um,
was designed
No,
originally.
I don't.
Yeah, I think it was a residential.
yeah, talking about.
So that, I'm wondering,
I think that
when
was
they
because
got
of
that approval,
Yes.
because the lot is so tight, they would assume for no garbage. So, because then we just let that stand.
but so they had, I mean, they had the existing, right, that's like the 2004, the upgrade included alternative technology approved for remedial use and did not permit the use of technology for new construction or increase of flow. Wouldn't that have included the garbage grinder?
Yeah, that's
restriction
what I'm
of that
thinking, that it
technology?
might have been
So we think that
connected
this is
with
really
that.
probably a continuation of whatever the remedial use
Yeah,
for
'cause
IA
it's
was in
only
2004.
You can check
So
the
it would have,
file.
and it was a 4-bedroom, so that implies that, right, it did not get designed for a garbage grinder, so maybe that stands. Maybe,
I
Do you want me to
know
check
what
the
final
file?
approval stated, but the original plan for the four-bedroom did not say.
That
yeah,
would be
garbage.
actually,
But is that the 2004 remediation, or that's the original
Yes.
plan?
Yeah, it was designed at 440 gallons, so probably didn't require one.
right, now, we can have Ellen check if
I mean, that way
we,
you'll
to
know for
verify
sure.
somebody does
Well,
not.
or can we require it in the context of this, where,
Yeah, why not just add it to
Yeah.
this, and then, you know.
Okay.
The deed, another,
A
a
deed
garbage
restriction.
grinder, deed restriction if there's not
If
already
it does
one
not
there.
already,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
okay, excellent, all right. Okay, and then the other question, so maintenance of the grease trap, does that just,
That comes under the
It's-
Title
yeah, there's-
V.
okay, so
Go ahead,
Title
Paul.
V is.
There are stated requirements in how much settled solids and how much scum. So
Okay.
when they come to pump tanks, they check it.
Yeah, they would need to ask for a waiver from the board if they're not doing it every 3 months. So they have to check it and pump it every 3 months. If it does have a situation where they're just pumping water, then they could come in for a waiver. The pumper could send a letter to the board and ask for a waiver from
Again, for this pattern of use where you're like not washing dishes and it's a coffee
Yeah,
shop.
it
like
may
you're-
not need to
They may
be
well
pumped
be able
every
to come
3
in and
months.
ask for that.
Well, are they
No sense
cooking
hauling
there?
water.
But I think
don't
again,
know.
if we're
Good
doing like-
question.
Are they cooking there? Are they planning to cook stuff?
I would think they would heat up stuff.
I think warming,
Right.
Yeah.
like,
But again, if
Well,
it's-
I'm wondering.
are they baking or?
No, are they frying bacon or
Yeah, that's what I
making
was
French fries?
suggesting.
You know, things that are going to discharge a
grease
lot
trap.
of fat.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
grease trap, he
I
said.
don't know.
I mean, they're putting a
But so I
grease
think
trap
they're,
on, so.
they're designing
there
a system
must be
that
doing
even if they were
something.
a McDonald's, this would be
Yeah.
compliant. And so they, as a coffee shop, should presumably be lower risk than that, so.
And they'll find out when they do the pumping, whether it's
Yeah.
overloaded.
And actually, you know, this is a fast system, and
Yes, it is. It's going to have to
actually
be
works
checked.
pretty well, even with a garbage collector. That additional load is good for the system.
So it sounds like in this case, we would have it conditional to garbage grinder deed recording if one isn't already present. And then I guess the other question, and Claire in her email had mentioned, since the site is unoccupied, an inspection, I think her language was, you know, please note that many boards, upon receiving a passing system inspection report for an unoccupied facility, require system inspection after some period of occupancy. Is that something that we also want to
I would say
incorporate
up
into
to
this?
6 months of occupancy.
Yeah, does that sound reasonable from your standpoint? And so is that a condition for the plan
Yes.
approval?
Definitely.
Okay, so it'd be conditional upon a deed recording for garbage grinder if not otherwise already present, and conditional for a system inspection after a 6-month
6
period of
months.
occupancy. And then I'm sure you've done so, but I think Claire gives some guidance in terms of the patterns of use over time in the storage, and I just would want to make sure that the applicant has had a chance to receive and review that email directly as well.
The last email from Claire?
Yeah, the
Yes.
one, perfect,
So,
perfect. That's a January 14th.
And does anyone feel a need to have them remove walls in the upstairs?
I don't, from my standpoint, like, we don't have a room count basis.
Yeah.
I think we have to be, I want it to be really clear for the pattern of use, because I want to avoid some future confusion, because you can imagine well-intentioned people 5 years from now saying, this coffee shop's great, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a meeting space upstairs? I'm not worried about somebody setting up an apartment, but I'm worried about patterns of use. And so that feels like that would get caught by the building permit process if the permit
and
process
if the
were
board so
followed.
wishes, I mean, the deed recording will be in place at no use except for storage. But also, there was a suggestion when it's inspected for its food inspections.
To just double confirm
That
that.
inspector go
Yeah.
upstairs and make sure it's only storage.
Right.
Yeah,
And I
I don't feel.
don't feel any need to have walls come
No.
down, because storage
Yeah,
is
I don't
storage, and hopefully.
But I think we
and
wanna
If that's
have-
the case, then there's not a point to remove it. And
Right.
who knows if they'll want it to go back to residential at some point. so.
Yeah,
So
so I
are
think
you
the 3D
requiring a deed recording for the?
I think we're
Garbage
fine.
grinder and that storage use only,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Although if they, I guess my question is, right now we're saying with a 22 gallon or 22 seat system, they need to do that. They may decide as a business, boy, we are happy to lose seats because people aren't sitting, but if we could have a meeting space, that would be nice. Are they still able to do that?
The
That's
problem with that is
totally
that
different.
The minute, even if you only wanted 10 square feet of meeting space, it takes 200 gallons of
Ah,
water to
okay.
flow away. So
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a totally different use. I mean, the 12 and the 22
So in that
are
case, it
for
sounds like the
for
deed recording
food
provides-
establishments,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
So in that case, the deed recording sounds like it fully covers
yeah.
all likely scenarios without creating an undue burden, because the threshold for changing it would already be pretty high.
I think it seems appropriate.
Okay, so we've got 3 deed recordings, we've got garbage grinder, we've got storage on.
Storage restriction is the only use, that's the only use for the second and third floors.
And then an inspection, system inspection 6 months after occupancy.
Although, oh,
That
okay.
would-
That's not a- that's not a
Oh, right,
deed
right,
recording.
sorry,
No,
that's a condition.
that's just a condition.
The 2 deed recordings, 1 other condition.
Mhm.
And again, this is all for the approval of the exterior grease tank.
Right.
There will be, just for the record, there will be other requirements for water test prior to a food permit being issued.
Okay.
So that's set on the record.
Do you have any concerns with any of that?
No, is it safe to assume that you folks will write that deed recording
Yeah.
to make sure it's the way you want it?
Yeah,
You mean the language?
The language?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll provide that. Probably won't be tomorrow.
Move.
So do I have a motion to approve the plan for the proposed addition of a 1,600, or 1,000-gallon grease trap conditional to a deed restriction for garbage grinder if such a deed restriction doesn't already exist, as well as a deed restriction limiting the second and third floor use to storage, and conditional for a system inspection 6 months after occupancy.
So moved.
Second.
And then I have one other question, just in case. Is the basement finished? Is there a basement and is it
There's a
finished?
basement, but it's not unfinished. It
Okay.
has
Okay.
All right.
storage tanks for the old uses.
If you don't mind, I'm glad you asked that question. Have the tight tanks been removed that were used for the salon?
I don't know.
Okay, so if there's no use for them, they shouldn't be used, you know. They had tight tanks for the beauty salon,
Yeah.
There's no way they wouldn't have any reason to use it.
you know.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Do you want to do 2 Whitney Street?
Yep.
Or 2 Whitney Drive?
Daryl, can I
Yeah,
ask
this
you a
one's
question?
Drive, because we'll be getting a plan someday for 2 Whitney Street.
How does this compare in size to the sandwich shop? Just because I don't have the.
Oh, if you want.
Do you remember this?
I bet it's smaller than
For what? For the sandwich, relative to the sandwich shop? It's smaller.
that. Yeah.
No, this is smaller than
Yeah.
the sandwich shop.
But I wasn't sure.
Well, 22 seats is actually a lot.
Yeah, it sounded
Like
like.
5
It's
tables.
Not really, guys, no.
It's like 5 tables.
And they can make them pretty close. It's
By the
not like a
branch.
huge,
I was
Yeah.
just
No,
curious.
but I mean this Sherborn sandwich shop, when I think of having gone there.
Oh, yeah.
oh, there were way more, there was at
Was that
least
classified
22
as fast
seats.
food? Do you know?
Because he made that whole area, seating area, like to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
side.
But was it
Fair
classified as
lunch,
fast
but
food or
you
no?
can't-
Or
What?
just, was it classified
All right.
as regular food establishment?
Whitney Street.
I don't think
Drive.
they
Whitney
use
Drive.
dishes.
But you're looking
Oh,
at
Whitney
Whitney
Street.
Street.
Get a
I-
sense
And this is
of.
Whitney Drive.
How-
Driveway comes up, believe it or not,
Yeah.
The driveway comes to the
Funny
street,
story,
and the street comes to the
quick.
drive.
what happened was the Title V inspector went to 2 Whitney Street in error. He was supposed to be at 2 Whitney Drive,
Oh,
and the
this is
owner-
like summer rental.
The owner came out and said, "What are you doing here?"
And failed.
And
Oh, wait,
so-
what?
So then, they
Oh,
said,
this
well,
is good.
we
Wait,
might
which
as
one is
well, now
2?
that we know the status, so the same engineer got the soil testing for 2 Whitney Street and 2 Whitney Drive. 2 Whitney Street will be here someday, it's right over here. Here's Whitney Drive, here's the driveway coming in, but it does face
In all
Whitney
fairness,
Street.
you can see where the guy would make the mistake.
Yeah, because really, the house is on facing Whitney
Yeah, yeah.
Street, even though the driveway is Whitney Drive. But anyways, the plan's been, I've already reviewed a previous,
I already want it staked.
Oh my gosh.
anyways, so you're
Wait,
looking at a
where's-
revised plan.
So
They had to
Whitney
re-
Drive, Whitney Street.
Where's Western?
His Whitney Drive, and here's the
I think
locus.
Western is right over here.
Western
Western
is
is
right
here.
here. Come up, and there's Whitney Drive that goes to a dead end cul-de-sac.
I need to look at that map.
Yeah.
Not just.
And their lot's very unique. Look at how this lot goes. They have
It's such
a,
a keyhole lock.
this.
That is a weird
exact-
lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
It comes up, and there's the well. The well's in this little spot. And there's the abutters well's 197. They had good perk rates. That's
Yeah.
why they're showing the distances.
So their well is further from their house than their the abutters well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
197, 293. But it's such an
interesting.
interesting way they jogged in this L shape.
But why?
I think for the well, maybe
Yeah,
something else.
but then why,
too.
but there's like a kicker at the end still,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, like a golf, like a hockey
Yeah.
stick.
That
Golf
is,
stick.
yeah, like a music,
It's
that is
really
like one of the
very-
oddest shaped
yeah.
lots.
I'd love to know too, I don't know why. But I do recommend approval, it's been tested. They meet the distance requirements, they're not adding
No
bedrooms.
variances.
No variances, it's new construction, it's a replacement, but it meets new construction.
Perfect.
Okay, so do we
That
have
sounds-
a motion to approve the plans as presented?
With the- yeah.
Garbage
That's
grinder.
right, because
Garbage
we're not
grinder
doing the hearing
restriction.
With the deed recording for the garbage grinder.
So moved.
Second.
You gotta remember
All
that.
in favor?
Aye.
We do that.
All
differently.
right.
So it's only the garbage grinder deed recording?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right, so 51 Forest Street, and I have to recuse myself, I'm in a butter.
Or do you want to do 28 Pleasant Street first, and then, and that way you can just leave it the, yeah.
Which one are we doing first?
Oh, I guess it doesn't matter.
You okay?
Yeah.
Are we doing
I
51?
think I'll just sit here.
Let me open this up.
That's all right with everybody.
Sounds good.
So we're doing,
Bury the other plans. Trying to avoid that mic. So 51 Forest Street, they had a previous system there in the 80s. So it's an industrial building, it's not a house, it's right near the tracks. You open up the plan, I can show you.
Oh, I know what
Yeah,
this
it's a
is.
tapestry place, I believe, right now.
So weird.
It is, it used to be a
Yeah.
site of pressing.
Yeah.
that was the old cider one from about 150 years ago up till just
Is this near
before
the
I got here.
tracks?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
maybe
I know
50s
exactly
when
where
it
this
stopped
is.
running.
I walk my dog past.
Here's the tracks right here.
Yeah.
And the old system's right here. And it's really just a direct replacement for the not construction, for the existing building, which is used for, I think carpentry right now, for industrial use. They did have some issues on the previous plan, they did resolve those issues. It's a traditional trench system. They're using it 15 gallons, as they did in the past, per person per day with up to 35 employees. But zoning will determine if they got enough parking for 35 employees. But they
That
do
seems
have
like a
area in the
lot.
back. Well, they have area, I think I saw 2 people that I was there soil testing. I don't think they have 35 employees. They may, they have the capacity, but again, that's a zoning issue. He'd have to make sure the building commissioner have to make sure they have the right parking.
And do they do finishing there?
I didn't go in. I just stayed outside, but I heard some sog going on.
Okay.
So
I
I
don't
really don't know
know.
what
I
they're
mean-
planning.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's gonna be a zoning issue, whatever they do,
Yeah.
because they are in a residential neighborhood. I do recommend approval of the plan as presented, as a replacement septic system for the existing system.
Yeah, I mean, they can't put any
And no
chemicals or
variances.
anything in that wouldn't be.
There's no garbage credit, it's an industrial.
I just wonder, because like if you're doing.
If they're just like sawing and assembling and then,
I think it's just a
Yeah.
question, if it's a furniture shop, I'd be surprised if there wasn't finishing there, if they're saying.
You know, maybe they'll have a little kitchenette. They did ask for the deed restriction. They didn't design for a garbage grinder. They don't have to for an industrial building. I'll leave it up to the
oh,
board.
yeah, that's that
But
weird
if they put a
thing.
cafe in or something, they did say.
Cafe?
Yeah.
This place, I mean,
I don't-
this looks like a
You can have a
dinky
cafe.
old building
Is that
from the
weird?
road, like,
Is that that
So do you
weird?
have- do you have-
Maybe I'm just-
no, no,
They don't
you're
have any
thinking of the right
conditions,
building.
Yeah.
It's been changed a little over the years.
Look like a
Deed
weird.
restrictions.
Yes, it looks a
Yeah.
little weird. It was a cider mill.
It's up to the
It was
board.
one of the largest ones in the world, when Sherborn was one of the largest cider producers in the
Okay.
world for about
Oh.
25 years at the end of the 19th century.
You can't really see it all from like what
And
my vantage.
when I moved here in '64, it had just stopped operating, because we went over and looked at it, and it was just shut down, but people,
Yeah, I think that was
all
an
those
error.
apple trees,
Yeah.
came there, they crushed it, they made cider, it went down the railroad track to the port and to England, because that's where it all went. It was a huge export business.
So do I have a motion?
That's the history.
Are the apple trees still there?
Well, they're
Well,
all
there
over
was
the
Dow's
town.
Orchard. I
They're
mean,
all-
Right,
every,
okay, just all over town,
Yeah.
anywhere, people just went there
So
to
do we have a
produce it.
motion to approve the plan? as
So moved.
presented? I think it's
Yeah.
conditioned
Second.
to a garbage grinder
Yeah, the
restriction.
engineer.
well, I don't know that we can do that, because it's a commercial building.
Yeah, I was just saying that.
Yeah,
I don't know
So
why
not-
they
not
put that
conditional?
down.
I don't,
Perfect.
it's not
That
really
sounds-
germane.
Sounds good. So
Yeah.
without condition?
Yeah,
I
I
would
don't
say
think
so.
so.
I think that was an error. They just boilerplated it.
We got a.
I mean, I wouldn't say no if they wanted to, I don't know.
They put it on their
Yeah.
plan.
Oh,
The only thing
then
I was
let's,
thinking is-
fine, keep
I would say
it.
if they put it
Gonna
on
have
their
a cafeteria maybe?
I would say they put it on their plan.
Yeah, that's
They said
fine.
no garbage
Keep it,
grinder.
yeah.
So condition to garbage grinder. restriction
As
provided.
noted on their plan.
As
Noted on the plan.
Yeah.
Do I have a so moved?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, one
So
more.
the reason for it is, the know, if you make the cider and seal it up, it ferments, it becomes bubble,
In terms
right?
of like,
28
Yeah, it turns to hard cider, but there was a craze for it in England. It was the national drink there for about 20 years. And they couldn't get enough apples from England, so they started importing it. And we're the closest, so Sherborn, that's why all these apple trees are in everybody's yard.
because we're the most easternmost
Yeah,
point,
and a
yeah.
big port, you know, and it was easy, you could load it on ships and, you know, and.
This is like Johnny Appleseed was a bootlegger.
Yeah, and then it fell out of favor until, what, about 10 years ago when cider came back, hard cider? And now we're doing it again, so
Too
everybody.
sweet. Too sweet. Yes.
It was the largest cider mill in the world at one point. I don't know if you.
That's amazing.
I mean, yeah, it was huge. And Sherborn
Our
was one
town,
of the,
like, it's just hard
was
to
one of the
imagine.
largest cider producers in the world for that little window. And,
When was this at?
So the
Late
building used to
19th
go over
century,
the railroad.
you know, like 1880 or something like
So,
that.
on both sides so that the trains could drive right through and.
Yeah,
There you go.
right down to the wharves, out of the ship, over to England.
It's
and,
really unlikely that 28 Pleasant
so
Street
cool.
will offer as much interesting historical.
It's not as interesting, but this is where the gentleman wants to put a sports place for his son, a basketball hoop and all that. So the house is right here. Here's
My
Pleasant
kids are
Street.
really underserved.
I think you know where they can go, though.
It's called the
Yeah.
yard.
We have birthday parties for like
The
every
yard.
Just so the board
We're gonna
knows,
do
this
musical
is
chairs at our
multiple
house. We're not
jurisdiction.
renting a space.
In all respects,
Yeah.
I don't even see where this is our jurisdiction, but they can do it. All they're doing is they're gonna put a pipe in 10 feet outside their building, or a little bit less than 10 feet, and go into the existing house. That's it. But they're putting an ejector pump in. I can recommend approval of it, but I really have to state with the condition you get a plumbing permit, because the plumbing code will address everything on this. This all falls under plumbing code. It gets submitted to us, so we can bless it, conditional to a.
So is it
plumbing.
really a septic alteration?
I don't see it that way.
Why-
but,
yeah,
I
'cause
mean,
why
But
is
it counts as a room.
But this is the
Yeah.
interesting part.
Yeah.
Plumbing code covers 10 feet out. It goes 10 feet out of this building and it's 10 feet out of the house, but our code covers it too.
Oh, so it's kinda
It's
in
multiple
between, yeah.
jurisdiction. So I recommend approval of this pipe
Okay,
with
but
this,
it's,
with an ejector pump. That will have to meet the plumbing codes, because we don't get involved with ejector pumps.
How does it do
It's
with
in-
room count?
It's fine. They had, this is a new septic system. I gotta go around the house, upside down here. Where's the system? It's right here, up in here. That was put in, I think, 5 years ago for 5 bedrooms or whatever. I did the bedroom count already.
Okay.
And actually, we've seen them here before. Here's the plan.
right, I assume it
Yeah,
counts.
and they
They
have,
changed the
Yeah.
room count.
they have more
so-
space. They're gonna put a half
Where
bath,
street
maybe a
this
full
town is,
bath.
but
is not
Yeah,
what
yeah,
he's
yeah,
thinking.
wait.
Okay.
But it meets our, it will still be fine.
Okay.
He gave
Okay.
himself extra room for that. In fact, we
Perfect.
saw
I know
it
where-
back in 2015, we discussed it, 6-bedroom septic
Isn't
was
it
installed
like-
in
What was the date?
2016.
What was the date of that?
Sorry, October 2nd, 2015.
Okay.
Is that 15? How can that be 15? We said 2015, 16. Maybe, can you read that number? That's not 15, is it? That's gotta be 16. You got it folded over, I'll let you figure it out.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
what- It
I'll
was
look
discussed,
for
the
it's
board
October.
reviewed it. I remember it was here, future sports
I
barn.
I
with
don't
bathroom
know,
is
I've walked
proposed.
up and down that street
And,
100
It was
times.
noted second floor playroom is considered the bedroom.
It's one off
area.
Maple.
I know
Yeah.
exactly where it is, and I know where every square foot of that street
Recommend approval.
is.
Yeah.
All
Drew a
right, do we have a
blank.
motion to approve the plans as presented, conditional to
Also,
plumbing?
plumbing review and permits being issued by the plumbing
Yeah, so
inspector.
that's like.
So moved.
Seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, Rick, all we have left are warrants and payroll minutes and next agenda items, so.
Do you want to, I mean, I read through the general chemical, but
Oh,
Oh,
did we
June
not do,
10th,
oh, that's
we
right,
didn't do
I
that.
crossed it out, but we did not do that yet. Okay, go ahead.
oh, no, I mean, it just sounds like Drew did the oversight while DEP did the sampling. He said it looked much improved relative to how it was performed the previous go-round. He asked why they switched to 8260 instead of 524 for the analysis. It's pretty much the same analyte list, and so it's just two different analytical methods. And 8260 is what we do to look for volatiles in groundwater. And General Chemical they do 8260 on all the monitoring wells because it's the chlorinated chemicals are all picked up. So they were just running the water for that same group of chemicals. So there's some things that are called like tentatively identified compounds that fall outside this regular list that Drew asked DEP if the lab could just report if they find any of those, we call them ticks, if they could just report them out. Not that there's standards for them, but just so that we know. And I don't think you received an answer back. And then, I have not heard anything about the data, but there is the public meeting tomorrow night in Framingham. I'm getting sick, I cannot go. I've been out all week, and I'm ready to pass out. But,
But was
it's,
good?
huh?
It was a good trip?
Oh, no, yeah, no. So, I don't know if anyone else is interested in making it.
I could go.
You can go to school.
I could,
Yeah, that'd be great.
this is, it's tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night, it's from 7 to 9 at the Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, I know where it is.
And then just take notes and then I can explain what it means later. But they're basically just gonna talk about the new plant. So I think, you
The
know.
the remediation plant they're gonna
Yes,
put in?
yeah.
Right.
Pretty much what they presented for
The thermal.
counter-reps, but now this will be for the public.
So, it should be actually easier to understand than previous.
How many years
because
supposed to be for?
Hopefully,
It wasn't hard what they
Hard.
presented,
Yeah.
in fact, they didn't give as much technical detail as
And
people
they
were
will-
asking
Or
for.
these, yeah.
they will give probably
Some reason
less
they
to
don't.
the public, so, yeah, so I think that seems straightforward, and it's just, I haven't seen any information about data yet. It should be coming in, and I would say next week. I'll be in California.
Yeah, they gave a longer, I forget how many weeks, but it was longer than I expected.
It's usually, even for like cheap, it's usually 10-day turnaround time.
Except that's,
I think in
what
the-
sticks in my mind is that I thought they'd
there's
say
something in there
2
that
weeks
said a
and it
month.
wasn't, yeah.
It's,
Something
they
that-
said longer than that?
There's something in
It's
the
a long
packet
time.
was like a month.
I wasn't
That's a
sure why
really
it
long
was.
time.
I could be wrong on that, but
No,
my recollection is I
I
saw
just
something that was like
remember-
4 weeks.
So anyway, so I guess
So,
You may be back.
I might be back, and then I can't make isn't there a meeting in March?
March 4th, and March 18th.
Yeah, and I cannot make the 18th, I'll be flying back from California, again.
And then I think the other follow-up piece, I wrote a paragraph that I've got Daryl's feedback on for the, what is it, the
Annual report.
Yeah.
And so I think that we will share it with the group, but if it's okay, we'll just kind of wordsmith it
Okay.
there. It's really good.
It's
I've got
due.
parentheticals. It's due tomorrow.
Yeah, so,
And at the last meeting, we authorized you to
Yeah,
write it up.
I felt like I did a really good job. I've got
Yes.
parentheticals. That feels like
Excellent.
that's how you know it's really good.
Conjunction,
So I
junction.
think we just minutes and
Yes.
payroll.
Yep, okay, Rick, so
Yeah.
you can,
I was pretty close.
end the
I-
transmission?
I
9
thought we
o'clock, I'm
could
pretty
do it.
impressed,
9:01.
actually. I
With all
I
that
was,
stuff,
like-
that was.
I was
Three
concerned when I
variance
saw the
hearings.
agenda.
So, on this,
Yeah.
tomorrow, you
This is
Everything
Michelle.
is
Good night.
What, you said take notes, so.
No.